Obviously, I think we've done a community meeting up here maybe 2 years ago. The purpose of the community meetings, obviously, is to get information out about what the county is doing. That's why we decided also to include our work session in the community meeting. You can see a little bit of the process that we go through as we do that. And then also to find out, the issues that are facing citizens in the county throughout the county. So that's why we want to come out and meet with individuals throughout the county and find out what's going on, tell you what's going on with us, and just have that collaboration. Tonight, we do want to put a little bit of focus on the sales tax. I know that a lot of folks have heard about the sales tax, talked about the sales tax. All that we ask is that folks get educated about the reasons, and then, of course, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to vote on that later in the year. We just want to get the information out there and allow that to share. So what we will be talking about tonight will be the sales tax to begin with. Once we get into the open question and answer, you can ask questions about anything that's going on in the county, any issues or concerns that you may have, or you can ask any questions about sales tax or whatever else the case may be. So I'll kind of do my best to quickly go through some of the points that we had that we wanted to make regarding the sales tax. And so obviously the commission presented a resolution requesting the legislature to give us authority to call for a referendum for a 1-cent sales tax. The purpose for the sales tax obviously is after 2 years in office, we have cut our general fund budget as well as we've cut solid waste, we've cut the parks, obviously, we've cut public works. We've cut just about every department in our general fund budget by over 20%. We still have a budget deficit even with that cut. So we feel like in order to do the things that we need to do for the county's future, which would be to bring in jobs, to have good paved roads, and provide the services that we need to provide the county, that this is the way to go, would be to seek some type of additional revenue and new revenue that would allow us to do that. So some things that I want to point out before we get into the question and answer. I do want everyone to know the county does not get any sales tax right now. The sales tax that we receive, the 2 cents that's in place, actually goes towards education, so that's not any county revenue that we get. That's something that a lot of folks aren't aware of. And the reason we're pursuing a sales tax as opposed to maybe a property tax or some type of gas tax is a sales tax is something that doesn't only affect folks here in Jackson County. It affects folks that come through Jackson County, folks that may stay the weekend in certain places, or visitors and tourists, and we feel like that's a benefit there. But it's also what we would consider a growth tax. Property taxes, some of these fees that are in place, they don't grow as the economy grows necessarily. With a sales tax, that does grow. It allows us, as we have more traffic on the roads, as we have need for either more deputies or better service fire departments, it gives us the ability to service and finance that with additional growth in the sales tax. Alternatively, obviously, if the economy drops, then you have to deal with that. But we see that, and we saw that back in 2008 with the economy from the revenues that we do receive. The problem is, where sales tax recovered long ago from that, the property tax is just now reaching the levels that we received back then. Some of the other points I want to make, like I said, the county general fund's been cut by over 20%. We had a $1.4 million deficit is what we ended 2013. That's off of a $7 million budget, roughly. I think we may have budgeted at 8 at that time. But $1.4 million deficit. In 2013, we patched the budget with $350,000 deficit. So we've cut our budget by over $1 million, or found, in some cases, a couple of revenue sources from the park and solid waste to kind of help shore that up. So there's been a big gap that's been cut down there. We feel like we've cut out pretty much all the waste. Some of the things we've done to cut the budget include reduction in staff. We had a retirement incentive, but before that even, we did not hire certain positions as they became vacant. We eliminated waste, as I said, and there was some waste in the budget that we felt needed to be removed. We tried to eliminate all the waste that we could find in that budget. Reduction on contract expenditures, and then general changes in the way we've done business to try and reduce costs. One thing I want to point out, if this sales tax passes, we're not going to stop doing that. We feel the government needs to be responsible with the funds that we have, and we're going to continue to try to find if there's an issue with waste, If there's an issue where that money doesn't need to be spent, then we will try to cut that and reduce those costs. A few things on the revenue sources. Again, as I stated, we don't receive any sales tax. For every $36.25 that someone pays on a driver's license when you renew it, the county gets $1.50 of that. That's the only portion that we get. For every $23.25 you pay on a car tag fee, and that's, you've got your property tax on it, but for the tag fee itself, we get $1.25 of that. So we're getting, when you come to the courthouse and do business, we're not getting all those funds that you're paying. A lot of that goes to the state or a lot of the other agencies in the county. We think it's important to let you know that because we want you to know that we're really operating off of a penny budget. For a piece of property with a home that appraises for $100,000 within the county, we get $60 of that. So if your home appraises for $100,000 anywhere in the county and you've got your homestead exemption on it, the county gets $60 of whatever you pay. It varies depending on where you live, obviously, but that's what the county will get off of it. So, think about that when you pay your property taxes. One important thing, we'll talk about the roads and why that's important, but the amount of gas tax revenue which Jackson County received in 2014 was down 14% from 2011. So in 3 years, it dropped 14%. This year, I think we're looking like we may have about the same number. But we've seen the revenue from gas tax drop, tremendously over the past few years. And I think everybody knows the cost to pay has increased over that same time frame over the past 10 years. So we see, the money that's utilized for roads is being reduced there. TVA in lieu of tax for the general fund has dropped by 13% in the past 2 years. And of course, we know TVA in lieu of tax affects not just the county government, it affects the school board, the board of education, our municipalities, volunteer fire departments, rescue squads, a lot of different agencies, and I'll try to get a little bit more into that in a minute. Jackson County received $500,000 of federal funds for road paving each year. Is that correct? About 500 every year? 530. We paved about 4 miles on County Road 95 right over here is the one we paved this last year with that $500,000. That's what we got to pay with the federal dollars we got. With our local money last year, and we did this not because we had the money in the budget, we did this because we took it out of our piggy bank, we spent money to pave 8 miles of road paving. If we continue that trend, even if we're getting 4 miles from federal funds and 8 miles from local funds, if we continue that trend, it's going to take us over 90 years to get back to the roads we paved last year. Roads don't tend to last that long. I'm still learning the process, but I don't think they'll make it. So we've got to come up with some type of source of funding to help get these roads back paved, or we'll have to start taking them back to dirt to church. The cost of paving with asphalt ranges from $110,000 to $130,000 per mile, and the cost of paving with tar and gravel ranges from $40,000 to $50,000. So this road over here was about $120,000 a mile, is what we paid for 95. And I think this year we got our paving for $45,000 per mile with our tar and gravel treatment system. So paving is an expensive endeavor. Now, some of the what we want to use as sales tax, that's some information that we need to share. We need to tell you, where does our revenue come from? People ask that all the time, what are you doing with revenue you get? Well, that's some of the revenue that we get. What do we want to do with this one sales tax? The biggest thing, obviously, that we talked about is the county roads. That's kind of been a focus to some extent. A big chunk of this money will go to that. We think it's important because we have a lot of roads that are falling into disrepair. I know there's several folks here that have talked about some of the roads that they live on or that they're nearby and drive on every day that are important to them. And we feel like if we don't come up again, like I said, with some source of funding, we're going to have to come up with a different solution for our roads, and whether that be putting them back to dirt or whatever else. We can't continue to patch them, or else it's going to be just nothing but a patch there eventually. So that is what we kind of have the biggest source of funding going. Next would be school resource officers. Now, we're not going to be able to put school resource officers in every school. We don't think that that's going to be feasible. But we want to get enough to where we have a good presence and a good rotation, and of course work with the school board the best we can to increase the number of officers that are on out there. And that does two things. That puts your resource officers in your schools, but it also provides a resource officer or a sheriff's deputy in an area that may not see one very often. During the day, we may have 3 or 4 riding the roads, is that right? And in the evenings, we're We're lucky if we have 3, correct? So we need some more presence for the size county we have. We need some more presence of some deputies on the roads, I think. And of course, the safety of our children, I think is paramount. It's been something that's been talked about a lot since we've been in office. And when this idea came up in our budget meetings last year, this was one of the first topics that came up with the school resource officer. So that's one that we feel is very important. Now recently, fire departments in Jackson County have undergone some funding changes. Because of that, we've got some fire departments that are hurting. If something doesn't happen regarding funding for some of these fire departments, then ISO ratings are going to change, insurance costs are going to go up. There's a lot of negative effects that can happen if we don't come up with some type of support for the fire departments. Now, that wasn't something we talked about necessarily early on, but once we found out about the funding changes, we felt it necessary that these fire departments participate. A lot of folks, I don't know if we really realize or understand or appreciate what all these volunteer fire departments do. I think the word is right there in volunteer. You know, they're giving their time, they're giving their, in some cases, risking their life to do some things for the county, the citizens of the county, and I think it's important that we support them through this, especially in the hard times that they've got now. Community, industrial, and business development, whether it be water projects, sidewalk projects, items for any way we can help with the school system, different types of things that we can assist with when it comes to community development. And of course, industrial development, gas, as I said, water, sewer, different types of things we can do like that, as well as nowadays it's about bidding on companies. You have to put money on the table to get a lot of companies nowadays, and we need the resources to be able to participate in it. Last year, the Jackson County Commission gave nothing to our EDA office to support business development. We don't have the resources to do it. We're asking for the resources to help with that so that we can encourage more industry to come, so that we have something that we can put on the table when they say, you know, that they want to come here. We lost a very good project that would have been about 500 jobs last year to Mississippi, and the difference was money. I think we're at the bottom 3 in that site selection process. We lost to Mississippi, and of course they essentially may have bought the project, but it was hard. We couldn't compete because we didn't have the resources to do so. So, you know, there's a lot of benefit to being able to say, hey, we're willing to put something on the table there. And then the final point would be to provide and shore up the remaining budget deficit, as I've said, and then handle some other things in the general fund while we continue to reduce waste in those possible areas. So that's a rundown of some of the revenues, a rundown of why we want it. But before we get into in lieu of tax real quickly, are there anything from the commissioners, any other points on those 2 items we need to make?
Property, state of Alabama, Jackson County, state property.
And that's you know, Forever Wild could be a great thing for Jackson County. We do get a lot of folks that come from out of town to visit a lot of the properties, but like Mr. Venable said, the state has bought up a lot of property. Of course, we don't get property tax off of that. We don't get sales tax for those folks that come in, and that, I guess, leads to the good point. We could have 20,000 people come to Jackson County tomorrow just to visit and, you know, recreation or whatever, and unless they stay at County Park, the only revenue we get is that gas tax. That's not going to pay roads, a little bit we get off of that. So we feel like, again, the sales tax is something that will benefit when we have those things. We had the fishing tournament, the Big Bass Splash this last weekend. Again, the revenue we got was off of gas, and if anybody stayed at the county park. Beyond that, we don't receive anything. So that's important. Anything else? I do want to talk about TVA in lieu of tax real quickly. I get a question a lot about that. You know, it's why don't you just take the TVA in lieu of tax, that'll solve all your problems. What people don't understand is how that's broken down. And I'll go real quickly over how it's broken down and what it benefits, and then again, keep in mind any questions you may have about this. But TVA in lieu of tax goes to benefit volunteer fire departments, the rescue squads, economic development, ambulance service, all the municipalities in the county, Jackson County Schools, and the Jackson County General Fund. That is 89.5%, is that right? 88.5% of the TVA in lieu of tax gets broken up between all those entities. So unless we take it away from all those entities, there's no real benefit there. The remaining portion, which I think a lot of people are kind of up in arms or have questions about, is the legislative emergency fund. That's about $800,000 a year. Now, when we talk about TVA in lieu of tax, when we talk about that group that meets to kind of say, here's some of this money goes here and there, that's where that money is coming from. It's not coming from a big pot. It's coming just from that emergency fund. That emergency fund has decreased over half. They used to have $2.5 million, I think, that came to that fund every year. This year, it'll be just about $850,000 that comes to that. Now, even if the legislature gives that to us, to the county commission, that's not $850,000 we can just say, it's going to the general fund. That $850,000 goes towards education, goes towards, again, to support the Senior RX program, goes towards CASA, all these different organizations that you see through the county, these nonprofit organizations, most likely they receive funds from that remaining $800,000. So if it was given back to the county, we could cut all that out, and those organizations would be in a hurt, and we could balance our general fund. We still wouldn't be able to pave roads, but we could do that. But I don't think that that's the end-all, be-all solution to our budget problem. That's not going to solve the issue. So I did want to touch on that and explain a little bit about how those TVA in lieu of taxes work, because again, it's not the overall end-all, be-all solution to what we're looking for. We've got to look at a long-term picture, and that's what we're doing with the sales tax. So any comments on that before we proceed? Okay. Last thing, we'll answer some frequently asked questions, and then we'll open it up for any other comments or questions. I've already answered, what exactly will it be used for? The items that we've talked about, that's what we have set aside to be used for. Obviously, if there's opportunity, then we can expand that, but those are the core items, and that's what we want to focus on to use these dollars for. How can we be sure that roads will be fixed in a timely manner? I think that you'll see, it may take a year or two to get really going with that, but I think that you'll see a vast improvement in the number of roads that we pave on an annual basis with this. We could quadruple the number of roads we pave if we do, as we expect with this in lieu of tax, or with this sales tax. Okay, I had a comment that all the county roads are a mess and what's going on with all the money. Right now, the only funds that go to Public Works for paving or for any of the operations are gas taxes. The general fund does not currently supplement any. We know that's going to have to change. As I said, gas taxes have gone down 14% in the past 3 years. So we know that funding source is going to have to change, and we've got to work to make that happen, obviously. So, the money that's there, the answer is there's really not a lot of money there. We use the money to patch, we use it to mow, both of which I know are very important things. We get called all the time on mowing, and we get called all the time on potholes. Things like that, and everyday operations. We use a lot of that for materials on the roads that we do pave, and then some for the contract for the road we pave. And then of course keeping up the equipment that we have is an important aspect of it also. And we've done a good job, our engineers done a great job of keeping some of our typical equipment rotated, and even making some money off of some of those things, which helps the department obviously. But you can't do that with all the equipment, and of course we've got to keep it maintained. So that's, in general where those dollars go right now. Another thing I do want to specify, empty buildings. We've got a couple buildings on the square, which I think folks are confused as to whether it's the county's or the delegation. The county does not have responsibility or ownership of any of the buildings on the square except for the courthouse. I think, the legislature is trying to come up with some ideas on that. And I think they've done a good job trying to research all that, so I'm sure they'll come up with ideas for those empty buildings or what's going to happen there, but we don't have that responsibility. I said, let's see. Does this affect people that don't use county services? If someone that comes in for a weekend, staying whether it be a campground or whatever else, everybody uses county services. If it's the need for the fire department if something happens, or volunteer fire departments, if it's a need for a sheriff's deputy if something happens. They're driving on county roads a lot of times. So I think if you look at, the funds, people from outside paying these taxes, it's affecting them just as much as it is affecting the people in Jackson County, because if they're coming into Jackson County, they're utilizing our services and our roadways. Let's see. The question on was this unforeseen, result of bad management, not being proactive? There are a lot of things that led to the budget situation that we came into. The spending was part of it, but if you look over the past 7 or 8 years, you'll see where a lot of revenue sources the county was receiving went away over time as the economy fell and as there were certain situations where the dollars were being put in the wrong place and started being shifted where they were supposed to be going. So the revenue for the county actually was reduced with several different factors. I think there was a property tax that came up around that time that wasn't renewed. So a lot of different things affected the revenue side of this. And then, of course, the expense side, that was their increased spending as well with that going on. So that's all those things kind of led to this budget situation. And I'd be glad to sit down with anyone and kind of explain more detail on some of these things. But this isn't something that happened overnight. It's not something that just occurred. And it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. We've been working 2.5 years on it and trying to get it to where it's manageable. And we'll continue to work on this to keep the dollars where they need to go. So that's kind of a big question, general overview, but wanted to share that. We have not given raises since we've been in office. I do want to make that clarification. We've been in for 2 years. The county employees have not received raises in those 2 years. That's something that I get a lot of comments on, but we don't feel we can do that and be responsible for, especially if asking for additional dollars. But we've been trying to manage our budget, and you can't do things like that. We have continued to do business. We've got a park project we're talking about. Anything that we think is going to save the county money in the long run, or anything that we think is going to increase revenue in the long run, we're going to pursue that. But things that don't do that, we've had to stay away from, and unfortunately, that's been one of those things that we've not been able to do. So I think that's some of the general stuff that's been come up. Any other things you guys want to point